Imagine standing outside. You're fast asleep, and then you're just jolted awake by something you can't quite place.
Right.
You check the clock. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, right in the dead of winter.
The absolute middle of the night.
Exactly. So you walk out the back door, and you are standing by a frozen lake in the deep woods of Finland.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the air is so cold it practically crackles. And it is dead. Dead silent.
Well, snow does that, right?
Yeah, it's that specific kind of profound, heavy silence. You only get miles away from civilization where, like, a thick blanket of fresh snow acts as an acoustic sponge.
Right. It absorbs every stray ambient decibel.
Exactly. So you're standing there, your breath plumbing in the dark, and you're wondering what woke you up. And then, without any warning whatsoever, the sky itself starts to roar.
God, I mean, the descriptions of that roar from the primary sources we have today, they are just chilling.
They really are.
Because, they completely defy our baseline expectations of the natural environment. Like, we are conditioned to understand the acoustic signatures of our planet.
Sure. A wolf howling or...
Right, a sudden roll of thunder, or even just the low whistle of a pressure front moving through the canopy.
Yeah, the normal stuff.
Exactly. But the phenomenon recorded in these instances, it's heavily described as a metallic, grinding, almost apocalyptic trumpet sound.
A trumpet, yeah.
Yeah. It carries this mechanized tonal quality that simply does not map onto known biological or meteorological events.
It's a noise that it doesn't just hit your eardrums. It feels like it vibrates right through the center of your chest cavity.
Oh, absolutely.
It sounds like the gears of the planet are suddenly grinding without oil. Or like someone is blowing a massive echoing brass horn right down from the stratosphere.
Yeah, down from the sky itself.
And that specific scenario, the one by the lake in Finland, that isn't a scene ripped from a science fiction script.
No, it's not.
That is a real, documented, firsthand experience from one of the thousands of people who have witnessed what the internet has collectively dubbed the sky trumpets.
Which brings us to the core of the evidence on the table today for this deep dive. We are looking at a phenomenon that has, well, it's transcended local legend, right?
Oh, big time.
It's become this globally documented, incredibly viral event. And our source stack today is really dense and varied.
Yeah, we've got a lot to get through.
We do. We have viral YouTube transcripts from a comprehensive breakdown by the Mystery Files team.
Right.
We have extensive, highly detailed witness accounts pulled from active Reddit communities, specifically Our Strange Earth and Our Paranormal.
Where people are just frantically trying to crowdsource explanation.
Exactly. And then on the empirical side, we are examining a deeply researched scientific review paper from the U.S. Geological Survey.
USGS, right?
Yeah, alongside local news reports like the rather frantic coverage from Fox 26 down in Houston.
Right. And, my background, before sitting down at this mic, I was in journalism.
Right. Specifically, working as an investigative journalist, digging into cold cases. And I have to tell you, the sky trumpets, they represent the ultimate global acoustic cold case.
I like that framing.
Because we have millions of witnesses, right? We have thousands of hours of audio recording.
Mountains of data.
Yeah, data points spread across multiple continents. And yet there is no universally accepted consensus on who or what is pulling the trigger.
None at all.
So our mission today, for everyone listening, is to cut straight through the internet noise.
We have to.
We are going to separate the blatant digital hoaxes from the genuine, unexplained anomalies. And we are going to figure out exactly what is happening in our skies physically, psychologically, and geologically.
Well, the first step in that investigation, it requires understanding the human variable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because before analyzing the geology or the meteorological data, we really have to look at the psychological payload of these sounds.
So the panic. Yes. The sheer panic they induce isn't just an anecdotal byproduct, right? It is a central feature of the phenomenon that demands explanation.
As a journalist, whenever you are handed a mystery, you always start with the witnesses.
You have to.
You have to understand the texture of the event on the ground. And reading through these sources, the global scope of that panic is staggering.
It's everywhere.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't localized to one weird valley with strange acoustics. We are seeing identical emotional reactions across wildly diverse environments.
Right.
I mean, I mentioned the woods of Finland, but the sources also pull reports from the freezing Siberian tundra, the sun-baked coastlines of California, and like right in the middle of the concrete jungle of New York City.
Which is wild, and that geographical diversity rules out a lot of localized environmental quirks.
Yeah, it's not just a weird echo.
Exactly. The NYC account from the Reddit thread is particularly fascinating to me.
Oh, the one by the water.
Yeah, because the witness was living right on the water in a highly populated urban center, surrounded by the constant drone of traffic, sirens, subways.
New York is loud.
Incredibly loud. Urbanites have an incredibly high tolerance for noise, yet this sound pierced right through the city's acoustic baseline and triggered an immediate, visceral reaction.
Let's look at the timeline of some of the most prominent case files in the SAC. Take Terrace, British Columbia.
Okay.
It's August 2013, 7:3 in the morning. People are waking up, making coffee, getting ready for work.
Your normal morning.
Totally normal. Then suddenly, a sound starts echoing across the entire town, and it does not stop.
It just keeps going.
It lasts for 10 solid minutes. The prevailing description was a mix between a blaring metal alarm clock and a vuvuzela.
The vuvuzela, right? Yeah.
10 minutes of a sustained, discordant frequency just washing over an entire community.
And see, the sustained nature of the sound is a critical data point here.
How so?
Well, a gunshot or a thunderclap is transient, right? The brain processes the shock and immediately begins to recover.
Right. It's over in a second.
Exactly. But a 10-minute sustained drone prevents the nervous system from resetting. It forces the body to remain in an extended state of heightened alertness.
Oh, that sounds exhausting.
It is. And we see an even more visceral reaction in the Montreal incident from February 2016.
Remind me about that one.
A witness recorded a sound she described as, quote, the devil playing the violin in the clouds.
That is quite the visual.
Oh.
Or audio, I guess.
Right. But from a behavioral standpoint, her observation that all the dogs in the neighborhood were going absolutely frantic is highly significant.
Oh, right, because of their hearing range.
Exactly. Canines have a hearing range that extends far higher and slightly lower than human capabilities.
So they were hearing something we couldn't even pick up.
Yeah. Their collective distress indicates the presence of frequencies or intense physical vibrations that were perhaps on the very edge of human perception, but were overwhelmingly present in the environment.
The claustrophobia of these accounts is what really gets under my skin. Like, there's the witness driving right through downtown Detroit.
Right, in the car.
Yeah, they're surrounded by towering skyscrapers, completely insulated inside their vehicle. They hear the noise, but they specify that it sounded like the immense pressure of the sound was originating from directly above their car.
Straight down.
Yeah, it wasn't bouncing down the avenue or echoing from a construction site. It felt like a localized downward acoustic weight pressing on the roof.
And that localized downward pressure touches on a fundamental aspect of human neurobiology.
Okay, lay it on me.
Well, humans possess highly evolved directional hearing. Our brains use the microsecond differences in the time a sound wave hits our left ear versus our right ear to pinpoint a threat's location.
Like tracking a predator.
Exactly. It's a basic evolutionary survival trait. But when an environmental sound completely saturates the area...
Like the sky trumpets.
Right, making it impossible for the brain to pinpoint the source point. Or worse, making it feel like it is emanating from the entire sky at once. The auditory processing centers essentially short-circuit.
Wow.
Yeah, the inability to locate the threat triggers a profound, unshakable sense of vulnerability.
I want to look closely at a piece of evidence that brought all of this into sharp, agonizing focus for me.
Which one?
There is a video from Tallahassee, Florida. A mother is standing outside her home filming the sky.
Oh, I know the one.
You can hear this incredibly low, massive groaning sound rolling across the atmosphere. And her immediate reaction, captured on tape, is her voice shaking as she urgently tells someone off camera, "Get the kids in the bathroom."
The audio in that specific recording is striking, but the behavioral response is even more telling.
I mean, I'm a parent of two. When I watched that video, I didn't just hear her fear. I felt it in my bones.
It's palpable.
That is the absolute raw, primal instinct taking the wheel. When the sky sounds like the atmosphere is literally tearing open, you don't think about weather patterns.
No, of course not.
Your immediate, visceral reaction is to shield your children from an invisible, overarching threat. She ordered them into the most structurally sound room in the house, an interior bathroom without windows.
Because her brain was explicitly telling her that the world was ending.
Exactly.
And that psychological leap, right, from hearing an unknown sound to assuming an apocalyptic threat, that is a fascinating leap.
And I want to debate the mechanics of that leap.
Let's do it.
If we assume for a moment that these are just rare natural sounds, bizarre weather, or geological shifting, why do they trigger such a universal primal dread across so many different cultures and demographics?
That's the big question.
Why does the human brain instantly interpret a loud, unidentified tonal noise as an evil or apocalyptic threat, rather than just shrugging it off as bad weather? We see accounts in the sources of people in the deep woods of Alberta hearing variations of this sound that resembled human screaming.
Oh, that one was disturbing.
Imagine the isolation of the northern woods, the complete absence of human infrastructure, and the sky above you begins to emit a frequency that sounds like thousands of voices, all while your amygdala is simultaneously pumping your blood full of adrenaline.
It's a recipe for absolute panic, but, the disruption manifests in different ways depending on the community's context.
What do you mean?
Well, in contrast to the terror in the isolated woods, we see profound annoyance in more populated areas, which is its own kind of psychological tool.
Annoyance. Over the sky screaming.
Yeah. In Forest Grove, Oregon, the sounds took on an incredibly high-pitched, grating, mechanical quality. They were so persistent and irritating that the local residents actually flooded the 911 dispatch lines.
You're kidding.
No, they weren't calling in a panic. They were calling to file a noise complaint against the atmosphere.
Oh my God.
They wanted the local police to go outside and somehow force the sky to shut up.
The sheer audacity of calling 911 to complain about the sky is incredible. Yes, operator. The stratosphere is being a public nuisance. But, it highlights just how invasive this phenomenon is. It invades the sanctity of your home and your mind.
It really does.
So we have this massive modern panic. It's highly viral. It's all over YouTube. It's dominating TikTok. It's on local news broadcasts.
It's everywhere online.
And it is incredibly tempting to write this off as a purely modern digital era trend. Like a collective internet hallucination fueled by algorithmic echo chambers.
Where people hear a weird truck, film it, and label it a sky trumpet.
Exactly. But look, any cold case investigator knows that you never assume a mystery started the day the public noticed it.
Right.
You always check the historical archives. Did this phenomenon actually start with the invention of the iPhone, or are we dealing with an ancient acoustic anomaly?
The historical archives prove definitively that this is an ancient phenomenon.
I knew it.
The digital era simply handed the general public the technological tools to record the events instantly. But the localized experiences of the sky roaring. They are heavily documented long before anyone had a high-definition camera in their pocket.
The case of the Seneca guns is a perfect example of this deep historical root.
Oh, absolutely.
We are looking at the year 1819 in the United States, specifically around the Lake Seneca area in New York's Catskill Mountains.
Right.
The local populations were experiencing mysterious, booming, echoing sounds that rolled across the lake with such frequency and intensity that they became a cornerstone of local folklore.
They were famous.
Yeah. Washington Irving actually immortalized the phenomenon in his famous short story, Rip Van Winkle.
Oh, I remember that.
When Rip hears the deep rolling thunder in the mountains without a cloud in the sky, Irving's narrative attributes the sounds to the ghosts of Henry Hudson's crew playing a game of 9-pin bowling in the hills.
Right, and Irving wasn't inventing that detail out of thin air. He was documenting a known environmental quirk of the region.
He was just giving it a narrative.
Exactly. And even before European settlers arrived, the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois Confederacy, they had their own deep oral traditions regarding the voices of the lake and the booming sounds echoing from the water.
So the sounds were always there.
Yes. The human need to explain the unexplainable hasn't changed. Only the cultural vocabulary we use to describe it has evolved, from ghost pirates to alien spacecraft.
And the sources show us that this isn't just an isolated anomaly in upstate New York.
Not at all.
Different cultures around the world, completely isolated from one another historically, have been forced to invent terminology to categorize this exact same acoustic trauma for generations.
It's a global historical record.
Yeah, like in Belgium and areas around the North Sea, historical maritime records refer to them as mist poopers or fog belches.
Mist poopers. The terminology there points to a meteorological correlation.
How so?
Well, the coastal communities recognized a link between the heavy, dense fog banks rolling off the cold water and the deep, concussive sounds that seem to originate from within the mist.
Mist poopers. You have to respect the absolute blunt directness of the Belgians.
It's very descriptive.
It is. And then in the Ganges Delta region, an area with massive hydrological and sedimentary shifting, the sounds were known historically as verisol guns, implying a booming, explosive artillery-like quality.
Right.
And in Italy, particularly around the seismically active Apennine Mountains, the historical texts refer to the phenomenon as brontiti, which translates roughly to thunder-like.
So the diverse geographical distribution of these historical accounts, from the deep lakes of New York to the deltas of India to the mountains of Italy, it tells us that the source of the sounds must be a fundamental mechanism of the earth itself, rather than a localized oddity.
It's like finding these historical records is like unearthing a dusty leather-bound diary from 1819 that perfectly chillingly describes the exact audio profile of a modern viral video.
It's uncanny.
It proves that the widespread adoption of cell phone cameras did not create the sky trumpets. The cameras merely decentralized the surveillance of the sky. Because in the analog world, capturing a random, unannounced sound was incredibly difficult. You would have to be standing outside with a bulky magnetic tape recorder already hitting record, waiting for a noise that gives absolutely zero warning.
Yeah, the ubiquity of smartphones has fundamentally changed how we gather evidence.
We're all carrying sensors.
Exactly. We now have a global, decentralized net of billions of audio sensors running constantly. We aren't experiencing an increase in the frequency of sky trumpets. We are simply catching them in the act because our net is finally tight enough.
That makes perfect sense.
Prior to 2008, if you heard this massive metallic groan in the woods, you might tell a few friends. They would likely dismiss it as a distant construction site, and the data point would be lost.
But today,
you upload the file, and someone on the other side of the planet can confirm they experienced the exact same waveform.
So, faced with centuries of terrifying sounds, accompanied by the biological dread induced by infrasound, humans naturally build frameworks to process the trauma.
We have to.
We demand an explanation. And historically, when humanity stares into the terrifying, chaotic abyss of the unknown sky, we turn to the divine. We look for religious architecture to house the fear.
And the data reflects a massive resurgence of apocalyptic theological interpretations in the modern discourse surrounding these videos.
Oh, yeah.
If we analyze the deep dives on our paranormal threads, or look at the panic reported by Fox 26 Houston, which, by the way, ran coverage under the overtly terrifying headline, "Are these signs that the end is near?" we see a clear pattern.
A pattern of communities mapping these sounds directly onto biblical prophecy.
Exactly.
Now, I want to be very clear about how we are approaching this specific angle for you, the listener.
Yes, important disclaimer.
As investigators, we are looking at this theology purely through the lens of our source material. We aren't taking a theological stance, we aren't endorsing a belief system or mocking one.
No, we are impartially dissecting the frameworks that people are actively using to process this phenomenon.
Right. Because if you want to understand the modern mystery, you have to understand the specific shape of the public panic. So let's break down the exact biblical text that the internet has latched onto.
Okay. So the primary framework being applied by believers in these communities comes directly from the Book of Revelation, specifically the prophecies surrounding the seven trumpets.
Seven trumpets, yeah.
Yeah. According to the theological discussions in the sources, the sounding of these seven trumpets by angels heralds different, escalating stages of divine wrath.
Right.
And this happens during a highly specific 7-year period known as the tribulation.
And the text doesn't just say loud noises will happen. The sources outline incredibly specific cataclysmic geological and ecological events tied to the sounding of each trumpet.
The specificity is exactly why the imagery is so potent for people experiencing this.
Give me some examples.
For instance, the text claims the second trumpet triggers a massive mountain of fire hitting the sea and turning a third of the oceans to blood.
Wow.
Which some modern interpreters view as an asteroid impact.
That tracks.
Then the third trumpet involves a celestial body named wormwood crashing into the earth, which supposedly turns a third of the planet's fresh water lethally bitter or poisonous.
Okay. Also terrifying.
And the fifth trumpet is described as unlocking a bottomless pit, releasing swarms of demonic locusts to torment humanity.
The imagery is exceptionally vivid, heavy, and undeniably terrifying.
It is.
But what I found fascinating in the investigative weeds of the paranormal threads was a user who pointed out a massive theological contradiction regarding the timeline of these trumpets.
Yes, the timeline constraint is a major point of debate among believers.
Break that down.
Well, a very prominent theory within the specific eschatological framework dictates that the first trumpet will not actually sound until after an event known as the rapture takes place.
The rapture.
Right. The rapture is the belief that all true believers will be suddenly physically removed from the earth. Therefore, according to the strict internal logic of this specific theological timeline, the fact that believers are still standing on Earth recording these videos means the sounds currently echoing in the sky cannot possibly be the biblical trumpets.
Right, because they haven't been raptured yet.
Exactly. The timeline simply does not align.
I want to debate the psychological utility of this apocalyptic panic, because I see this constantly in cold case investigations.
What do you mean?
When you interview people who have been through the worst, most chaotic trauma imaginable, they actively search for a grand narrative. I would argue that assigning a religious meaning to these sounds, even if that meaning involves demonic locusts and a mountain of fire, is actually an incredibly effective psychological coping mechanism.
A coping mechanism built entirely out of apocalyptic terror. I mean, that seems counterintuitive.
It's about control and order versus sheer chaos. Think about the alternative. What is fundamentally more terrifying to the human psyche? The idea that there is a rigid, meticulously planned out script for the end of the world, managed by an all-powerful, omniscient God who is overseeing every terrifying event.
Okay.
The idea that we are clinging to a massive, chaotic rock hurtling through the cold vacuum of space, generating deafening, violent acoustic anomalies for absolutely no reason, and we are totally at the mercy of blind, random physical forces.
I see your point.
I think the human mind would rather believe a terrifying architect is in control of the trumpets than accept that the universe is utterly indifferent and the sky just screams sometimes. The prophecy gives them a sense of order, a recognizable timeline, and a narrative role to play.
The psychological drive for pattern recognition and narrative order is undeniable, yeah. Cognitive dissonance occurs when we experience something that breaks our understanding of the world, and imposing an eschatological framework resolves that dissonance.
Right.
However, while it might provide a dark comfort or a sense of order for the individual believer, on a societal level, it severely hampers the investigative process.
How so?
For non-believers, or for scientists simply trying to gather clean data on the physical reality of the situation, these apocalyptic theories act as a massive contaminant.
They muddy the waters.
Exactly. It shifts the entire public conversation away from, let's measure the acoustic frequency and check the local seismic data, to, the world is ending, repent.
Right?
It creates a feedback loop of mass hysteria. When the prevailing public narrative is rooted in end-times theology, rational, methodical scientific investigation becomes nearly impossible because the witnesses are too panicked to provide objective accounts.
And the panic definitely provides the perfect camouflage for opportunists.
Oh, absolutely.
Because once a community is primed by internet algorithms to believe the sky is sounding the alarm for the end of days, they stop looking closely at the actual evidence right in front of them.
They're too scared to look.
Right. So let's step away from the book of Revelation for a second. Let's put the investigative journalist hat firmly back on and look for the earthly, human-made culprits.
Good idea.
Because whenever an unexplained mystery goes viral, there is an entire cottage industry of hoaxers, trolls, and marketers ready to capitalize on the confusion.
We really must critically examine the viral epidemic of the early 2010s because the internet is absolutely saturated with fabricated evidence.
Fake videos everywhere.
Yes. While the core historical phenomenon is real, the digital representation of it is highly compromised. The sources highlight a critical breakdown by the fact-checking site Snopes.
Oh, I loved this part.
Right. It exposes exactly how fragile our collective digital reality truly is.
I was looking at the audio forensics from the Snopes breakdown, and it blew my mind how simple the mechanics of a viral hoax can be. They didn't uncover some massive studio production. What did Snopes actually find?
Well, they documented the actions of a single, deeply frustrated Facebook user.
Just one guy.
Just one guy who decided to conduct a rogue sociological experiment on mass hysteria.
Amazing.
This user was watching his friends and family succumb to the fear of the sky trumpets online. So, to prove how easily perception can be manipulated, he intentionally manufactured a viral fake video in under 60 seconds.
60 seconds.
Yeah. He simply took out his smartphone, pointed the camera at his balcony to record a completely mundane, quiet view of his neighborhood.
Nothing happening.
Right. And then held his laptop directly behind the phone, out of frame.
See.
And the laptop was playing the audio from an already famous sky trumpet video.
So it's a completely analog practical effect.
Yeah.
And the internet bought it.
Unquestioningly. He uploaded the clip, and the algorithm caught it. It spread like wildfire, generating thousands of panicked comments.
Wow.
He eventually revealed the hoax, explicitly stating his goal was to demonstrate that a video on a screen is not empirical evidence.
It is brilliant, but it is deeply concerning for anyone trying to investigate the truth. It proves that hearing the audio attached to a video file is no longer sufficient evidence. The context can be entirely manufactured.
Right.
And it wasn't just this one amateur on a balcony. The professional data analysts and sound engineers eventually got involved in debunking some of the most famous videos in the archive, utilizing advanced audio forensics.
Yes, and audio forensics completely shifted the landscape of the investigation.
How does that work? Exactly.
Well, investigators didn't just listen to the videos. They ran them through spectral analysis to visually map the sound.
Making a picture of the noise.
Exactly. When you convert sound into a visual waveform on a spectrogram, you can see the precise frequency peaks and valleys. It functions exactly like a biometric fingerprint.
So no two are identical.
Right. So sound engineers pulled the data from several of the most highly viewed viral videos, and they made a crucial discovery when comparing a world-famous video recorded in Ukraine with another wildly popular video supposedly recorded in a remote snowy town of Conklin, Alberta.
Two completely different continents.
Right. But the visual waveforms of the audio tracks matched perfectly, down to the millisecond.
They didn't even try to hide it. They literally just copy-pasted the exact same audio stream and layered it over different visual environments.
Exactly. And the undeniable proof was found in the high-frequency ambient noise.
Oh, this is the best part.
By isolating the upper frequencies of the spectrogram, the engineers proved that the exact same tropical bird calls were chirping in the background of both the original track and the video filmed in the freezing Canadian winter.
Unless the remote Canadian wilderness of Alberta is hiding a secret, thriving population of tropical macaws in the snowdrifts, we can safely categorize that entire branch of videos as fabricated.
Safe to say.
So we know people fake these videos for attention and internet clout. But what about the honest witnesses?
Right.
The people who genuinely hear a massive grinding sound, record it in good faith, but are simply misidentifying a secular human-made noise because the acoustics of their environment are playing tricks on them.
That's a huge factor. The Reddit communities provided some incredibly grounded mechanical explanations for localized incidents of strange sounds.
Like what?
In one specific case, a resident was terrified by a massive apocalyptic grinding noise echoing through their neighborhood.
Okay.
Upon investigation, they realized the sound was actually the heavy steel blade of a massive city bulldozer scraping violently against the asphalt several streets away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The sound waves were bouncing off the concrete facades of the buildings, distorting the source and masking the engine noise, leaving only the metallic shriek.
So the architecture of a city basically acts as a massive echo chamber, stripping away the identifiable context of a sound.
Exactly. Another fascinating count from the forums involved a newly constructed commercial hotel located a few miles away from a residential neighborhood.
Okay, a hotel.
The hotel had installed massive industrial-grade air conditioning units on its roof.
Those things are loud.
Very. And the resident noted that roughly one day a month, when the temperature and wind currents were in perfect alignment, the wind would catch the specific frequency drone of those massive AC units and funnel it directly over the hills to their house.
Straight into their neighborhood.
Right. And because the sound was entirely new, completely detached from its source, and seemed to emanate directly from the sky, the residents' immediate conclusion was a sky trumpet.
The atmosphere basically acted as an invisible acoustic wire, carrying the drone for miles.
It really did.
And we also have to factor in the intentional corporate manufacturing of weirdness.
Oh, the marketing campaigns.
Yeah. One of the sources explicitly noted that some of the highly produced, creepy audio clips circulating online were actually seeded by a viral marketing campaign for the Kevin Smith horror movie, Red state.
Really?
Yeah, they intentionally flooded the internet with unexplained audio to build a sense of ambient dread before the film's release.
It creates a perfect storm of misdirection. You have genuine environmental anomalies buried under a mountain of hoaxes, misidentifications, and corporate marketing.
It's a mess to sort through.
It is. But perhaps the most fiercely debated human-made explanation in the entirety of our source material is what I'll categorize as the train wheel theory.
Okay, Glenn McPherson.
Yes.
He's the Canadian high school teacher who took it upon himself to solve the mystery. And he sounds incredibly confident that he has definitively closed the book on the sky trumpets. Walk me through the physics of his theory.
Well, McPherson bypasses the atmosphere entirely and points the finger directly at the heavy railway industry.
Trains.
Trains. He argues that the overwhelming majority of these metallic grinding sounds are caused by large freight vehicles, specifically trains traveling and braking on curved sections of steel track.
Okay, the curves are important here.
Very. The physics are based on the mechanics of solid train axles. When a train navigates a curve, the wheel on the outside of the curve has a slightly longer physical distance to travel than the wheel on the inside.
Basic geometry.
Right. However, because both wheels are rigidly locked together on a single solid steel axle, they cannot spin at different speeds to compensate for the difference in distance.
Which means one of those wheels has to give.
Exactly. To cover the differing distances while spinning at the same rate, the wheel on the outside of the curve is forced to overcome static friction. It physically slips, skips, and violently scrapes along the steel rail.
Yikes.
This is known in engineering as the slipstick phenomenon. You have thousands of tons of steel violently dragging against steel, creating massive friction and generating an immense, high-decibel metallic shriek.
And that echoes.
Massively. McPherson is highly critical of the mystery surrounding the phenomenon, referring to the apocalyptic or atmospheric theories as emotionally attractive options that people prefer over the boring, secular reality of a freight train.
Okay, I am throwing a massive flag on the play here.
Oh, you disagree?
Strongly. Look, I completely understand the physics of the slipstick phenomenon, and I will readily concede that a massive freight train skipping on a curved track absolutely explains the metallic screech heard in an urban canyon like downtown Detroit or a major rail hub.
Sure.
That is totally logical. But as a cold case investigator, if a theory cannot account for the full geographical reality of the data set, the theory is incomplete.
I hear what you're saying.
What about the witness on Reddit who heard this massive groaning sound while standing by a frozen lake in the deep wilderness of Finland at 2 in the morning?
Right?
There are no freight trains navigating curved tracks in the deep Finnish woods.
No, there aren't.
What about the historical accounts of the Native Americans hearing the Seneca gun centuries before the invention of the locomotive? Trains do not explain the deep woods. They do not explain the ancient history, and they simply don't explain the sheer vibrating magnitude of the infrasound when the witness is miles away from any heavy infrastructure.
Your pushback highlights the exact reason this phenomenon remains classified as an unexplained global event.
Thank you.
The train theory is an elegant solution for a specific subset of urban data, but it utterly fails to account for the geographical and historical breadth of the evidence.
Exactly.
If human machinery cannot explain every incident, we are forced to look deeper. We have to look at the massive physical forces of the Earth itself.
Now we're talking.
What if the planet isn't just the stage where these sounds occur? What if the planet is the instrument generating them?
Now we are crossing the threshold into my absolute favorite part of this investigation.
The geophysics.
The geophysical evidence. The idea that the ground beneath our feet is actively crying out. Let's dig into the research published by the U.S. Geological Survey, specifically focusing on the work of the scientist David Hill.
David Hill's contributions are foundational to understanding the mechanics of these events. He authored a highly detailed scientific review paper that attempted to round up and categorize the physical causes of what he officially terms mystery booms.
Mystery booms, I like it.
Interestingly, Hill's research was heavily influenced by a personal experience in the field.
What happened?
He was out conducting research in California's Mammoth Mountain Range, a highly seismically active area. While standing on the surface, he clearly heard a very distinct, muffled, low-frequency booming sound echoing all around him.
But no earthquake.
Right. Crucially, he felt absolutely zero kinetic shaking. It did not register to his physical senses as an earthquake in the traditional rolling sense.
But he had seismic instruments running, right? And the data told a completely different story.
Precisely. When he checked the data from his highly sensitive seismographs, it revealed that there were, in fact, a series of small, localized earthquakes occurring less than 2.9 miles directly below where he was standing.
So the Earth was moving.
The Earth was violently fracturing, yes, but the kinetic energy wasn't reaching the surface.
The physics of that transition are wild. We inherently associate earthquakes with the ground rolling and buildings swaying, not the sky booming.
It's counterintuitive.
Very. How exactly does a subterranean kinetic tremor transform into an airborne acoustic event?
It all comes down to the depth of the event and the specific types of seismic waves generated. Deep earthquakes, occurring miles down in the crust, produce frequencies that are far too low pitch for human ears to detect as sound by the time the waves travel to the surface.
Right, we just feel the massive physical displacement.
Exactly. But Hill calculated that very shallow tectonic movements, what he calls judders, behave differently.
Judders.
Yeah. When rock fractures violently near the surface, it produces P waves, or compressional waves. When these fast-moving P waves hit the surface of the Earth, the boundary between the solid ground and the atmosphere causes a phenomenon known as seismoacoustic coupling.
So the energy transfers mediums
Yeah.
from rock to air.
Yes. The solid ground essentially acts like the massive diaphragm of a speaker cone.
Oh, wow.
The P wave physically pushes the ground up, which abruptly compresses the air directly above it, launching an acoustic wave straight up into the atmosphere.
But the ground doesn't look like it's moving.
Right. The ground barely moves, often a fraction of a millimeter, completely undetectable to a human standing there. But the speed and force of that micro movement are enough to punch a massive, audible booming sound into the air.
I want to give the listener an analogy for how I picture this massive tectonic grinding.
Go for it.
Think about living in an old wooden house, settling in the dead of winter. The temperature outside plummets, the wooden beams of the house rapidly contract, the tension builds, and suddenly at 3 in the morning, you hear this massive, violent CR-ack echo through the hallway.
Everyone knows that sound.
It sounds like someone just kicked in the front door with a steel boot, but it's really just the microscopic shifting of the house's joints adjusting to the thermal pressure.
Right.
What Hill is explaining is that the Earth's tectonic plates are doing the exact same thing, just on a scale that involves millions of tons of granite and basalt. It isn't alien spacecraft. It's the physical joints of the planet popping under immense tectonic stress.
The old house analogy perfectly captures the mechanics of sudden acoustic release without large-scale structural failure. The planet is a highly dynamic system, constantly under immense pressure. Sometimes that stress is released acoustically rather than kinetically.
That makes so much sense.
Furthermore, the geological anomalies discussed in the USGS paper aren't limited to solid rock and fault lines. The sources specifically move the investigation to the coastlines and the deep ocean.
The coastal reports bring in a whole new set of variables. The sources note accounts from big-wave surfers in the United States who are intimately familiar with massive, thunderous, booming sounds.
Right.
But the sound of a 60-foot wave slamming into a sea cliff is a surface-level event. The mechanics are obvious. The research points to something much stranger and far more powerful happening deep under the ocean floor.
This brings us to the fascinating and highly explosive methane theory.
Let's hear it.
Along certain coastal areas, particularly those associated with active seismic zones or post-tsunami environments where the seafloor has been disrupted, witnesses don't just report hearing massive, low-frequency rumbles.
They see things, too.
Yes, they occasionally report seeing mysterious visual anomalies, like flashes of light or fireballs on the horizon.
Fireballs on the ocean.
Yeah. Hill hypothesizes that a significant geophysical event, even a minor submarine earthquake or a sudden change in deep-sea pressure, could trigger the sudden destabilization of methane clathrates.
Methane clathrates. These are essentially massive deposits of frozen methane gas trapped in ice on the ocean floor, right?
Correct. They are stable under extreme pressure and low temperatures. But if a seismic judder disrupts the deposit, it can cause the methane to rapidly sublimate from a solid state into a massive volume of expanding gas.
Like shaking a soda bottle.
Exactly. This creates a colossal high-pressure bubble of methane erupting from the ocean floor. As this massive gas volume forces its way up through the water column and breaches the surface, the rapid expansion and subsequent cavitation, the collapse of the bubbles, can produce an immense percussive booming sound.
And the fireballs.
Well, if that highly concentrated methane gas breaches the surface and encounters a static spark or an ignition source, it can briefly ignite, explaining the historical reports of coastal flashes accompanying the booming sounds.
The idea that the ocean is occasionally burping up massive exploding bubbles of deep earth gas is both terrifying and scientifically elegant.
It really is.
But what if the sound isn't erupting from the dirt beneath our feet or the water off the coast? What if it's literally falling from the sky or riding the invisible currents of the weather? Let's dive into atmospheric alchemy.
If we shift our focus from geology to meteorology, we find a very official, heavily vetted scientific statement issued by the National Weather Service operating out of Tallahassee, Florida.
Oh, this is a good one.
The NWS office was dealing with a massive influx of panicked 911 calls from local residents who were convinced they were hearing the roaring of unseen tornadoes tearing through the sky, or genuinely believing they were hearing apocalyptic trumpets.
Right.
To quell the mass hysteria, the meteorologists issued a statement explaining a complex atmospheric phenomenon known as ducting.
Ducting. When I hear that word, I immediately think of the aluminum HVAC vents running through an attic. How exactly does the open atmosphere duct sound waves?
It requires a highly specific, relatively rare set of thermodynamic conditions to occur simultaneously.
Okay.
Under normal atmospheric conditions, when a loud sound is generated like thunder, the sound waves expand outward and upward, eventually dissipating into the thinner, cooler air aloft.
Standard echo.
Right. But occasionally, weather patterns create what is known as a temperature inversion. You get a highly stable layer of warm air sitting directly on top of a layer of cooler air near the surface.
Like a lid on a pot.
Precisely. The boundary between these two different air densities acts almost like an acoustic mirror. If you have thunder generated by distant lightning strikes happening 50 miles away, that sound wave travels until it hits that dense atmospheric boundary layer.
It bounces.
Because sound travels at different speeds through warm and cold air, the sound wave doesn't pass through the boundary. It is refracted, or bent, back down toward the ground.
It gets physically trapped between the solid earth and the invisible ceiling of warm air.
Exactly. The sound wave bounces continuously between the ground and the inversion layer, traveling unusually long distances with very little loss of acoustic energy.
Wow.
But as it travels through this atmospheric duct, bouncing back and forth, the original frequencies are severely stretched, filtered, and distorted by the physics of the bounce.
So it changes shape.
Yes. The sharp, high-frequency crack of the original thunder is filtered out, leaving only the deepest, lowest frequencies. By the time that wave finally reaches a neighborhood 10 miles away, it no longer sounds anything like a lightning strike.
Sounds like a trumpet.
It has been warped into a continuous, low-frequency, mechanized groan that sounds eerily like a massive unseen tornado or a sustained brass trumpet.
And when you combine the physics of atmospheric ducting with the jagged topography of local geography, the auditory illusions become even more severe.
Topography plays a huge role.
One of the deep dives on the Reddit forums pointed out that physical landscapes, steep hills, sheer river cliffs, and even moving high-pressure storm fronts can act as massive acoustic funnels.
Right.
They take a perfectly normal environmental sound, trap it, twist its frequency, and concentrate the energy directly down into a specific valley or suburban neighborhood.
It's like a megaphone.
Exactly. The witness hears a terrifying roar from the sky, but they are actually listening to the deeply distorted echo of a mundane event happening 2 towns over. It's essentially the Earth utilizing physics to play an incredibly complex, terrifying practical joke on human ears.
If we want to discuss the Earth playing an acoustic symphony, we really have to examine the data provided by NASA. Because this is perhaps one of the most mechanically fascinating and mind-bending details buried within our source material.
You were talking about NASA's Space Symphony. When I first read this section of the notes, I had to read it 3 times to ensure I wasn't misunderstanding the science. Walk us through what NASA actually recorded.
NASA has definitively confirmed, using orbital satellites and ground-based receivers, that the Earth naturally produces massive amounts of electromagnetic energy in the form of very low frequency, or VLF, radio waves.
Radio waves.
Yes, the interaction of the solar wind slamming into the Earth's magnetic field constantly generates this electromagnetic chorus. The scientists studying these specific emissions categorize them into different acoustic profiles, calling them tweaks, whistlers, and spherics.
Catchy.
But the crucial detail here is that the frequencies of these radio waves perfectly overlap with the frequency range of human hearing, roughly between 20 hertz and 20 kilohertz.
So the Earth is constantly broadcasting a radio show, but we can't tune in.
Exactly. The only reason humanity isn't driven completely mad by this constant planetary noise is that human ears are biological organs designed to detect fluctuations in air pressure acoustic waves.
We don't have antennas.
We are not equipped with biological radio antennas. As a NASA scientist brilliantly put it, if human beings had metal antennas protruding from our heads instead of ears, we would constantly hear a bizarre ambient symphony of strange, alien-sounding whistles and clicks emanating from the planet's magnetosphere.
But if they are radio waves and we only hear acoustic waves, how does this explain the sky trumpets? Is there a physical mechanism that translates those radio frequencies into something our physical ears can actually process?
The theoretical mechanism for hearing these radio waves is incredibly rare, but it is documented. It is known as electrophonic hearing.
Electrophonic hearing.
Under extremely specific conditions, a massive burst of VLF radio waves, perhaps triggered by a coronal mass ejection from the sun or a massive auroral storm, can interact with large metallic structures on the ground.
Like what?
A long metal wire fence, a massive steel bridge, or even, in highly localized cases, metallic dental work in a person's mouth.
Dental work, you're kidding?
I'm not. The metal acts as an impromptu transducer. It absorbed the electromagnetic energy and vibrates, converting the radio wave into a physical acoustic sound wave.
That is insane.
The witness would suddenly hear strange whistling or groaning noises that seem to appear out of thin air, because the metal environment around them is literally singing the song of the magnetosphere.
That is absolutely incredible. We are basically living inside the circuitry of a giant humming electromagnetic machine, and we are completely deaf to its operations until a freak atmospheric condition briefly translates the data into a language our biology can understand.
It's beautiful in a way.
It makes the planet feel profoundly alien. But before we begin to wrap up this investigation and close the file, I have to bring up the absolute weirdest, most jarringly unexpected culprit mentioned anywhere in the entire stack of sources.
Ah, yes. We have analyzed the geology, the meteorology, and the astrophysics. Now we must address the biological factor.
We have spent this entire deep dive talking about tectonic plates grinding against the mantle. We've discussed the complex thermodynamics of atmospheric ducting, and we've debated the apocalyptic theology of the Book of Revelation. And yet, one of the scientifically proven, deeply documented causes for localized, maddening, droning sounds emanating from the environment is a fish.
Specifically, the male midshipman fish.
A fish.
It is a biological marvel that creates a massive acoustic footprint. During mating season, the type I male midshipman fish produces a sustained, reverberating mating call to attract females to its nest.
Okay, but it's a fish.
Right. Human intuition suggests that a relatively small fish making a noise underwater wouldn't pose an acoustic problem for human beings living on dry land. But the biology of the fish relies on highly specialized sonic muscles that drum rapidly against its gas-filled swim bladder.
Like a biological drum.
Exactly. The resulting drone hums at a frequency of roughly 100 hertz.
And 100 hertz is an incredibly low penetrating frequency.
It is. Because water is far denser than air, it is an excellent conductor of low-frequency sound. The drone is incredibly loud, and it carries efficiently through the water column, propagating for miles.
Wow.
When that underwater acoustic wave hits the hull of a houseboat or travels through the pylons of coastal homes, the structure of the house acts as an acoustic amplifier.
Oh no.
The residents are suddenly subjected to a constant mechanical-sounding, low-frequency hum that vibrates the walls. Coastal residents subjected to the midshipman mating season have actively described the experience as literal torture.
I can't imagine.
It is a droning frequency that can keep entire coastal neighborhoods awake for weeks at a time, completely baffled as to why the very air in their homes is vibrating.
I have to laugh at the sheer absurdity of it, but it also forces a really serious, critical evaluation of human psychology.
Yeah.
Can the mating call of a fish truly be mistaken for an alien invasion or the opening trumpet of the apocalypse?
Apparently, yes.
What does that reflex say about our modern condition? To me, it is a glaring indicator of just how profoundly disconnected humanity has become from the natural environment.
We are very insulated.
We are. Our baseline for normal ambient noise is entirely constructed by human technology. We are completely accustomed to the hum of a refrigerator, the roar of a jet engine, or the drone of interstate traffic.
Sure.
But when the biosphere actually gets loud, when a fish utilizes its swim bladder to find a mate, or a tectonic plate shifts a millimeter in the crust, Our very first panic thought is the world is ending, rather than simply recognizing that the planet is a noisy, dynamic system.
You jump straight to the worst case scenario.
We automatically assume that any massive, unrecognized sound must be a direct threat to our very existence, rather than just nature going about its complex business.
It is a vital observation. Our technological bubble has insulated us from the raw acoustics of the planet. When the ancient, powerful, mechanical-sounding noises of the Earth's systems break through that thin veneer of modern insulation, we completely lack the contextual vocabulary to understand them.
We have no frame of reference.
None. The terror is born of alienation from our own habitat.
It has been a wild, expansive investigation today. Let's do a final synthesis of the evidence we've uncovered.
Good idea.
We have traveled from the terrifying biological reality of parents hiding their children in windowless bathrooms in Florida, all the way back to the 19th century folklore of ghost pirates bowling in the Seneca guns.
We covered a lot of ground.
We've exposed the viral digital hoaxes orchestrated by frustrated internet users, analyzed the audio forensics of duplicated tropical bird songs in the snow, and we've dug deep into the genuine hard science of seismo-acoustic coupling, deep-sea methane cavitation, and the thermodynamic tricks of atmospheric ducting.
And I think the most important takeaway from this entire stack of sources is that the sky trumpets are not a monolithic mystery with a single, neatly packaged answer.
No, it's a mosaic.
Exactly. While it is undeniable that a large percentage of the viral videos are maliciously faked using duplicated audio streams, and many localized incidents can be easily attributed to the slipstick friction of train wheels or distant construction equipment, the core historical phenomenon itself is absolutely real.
It is undeniable.
It is a confirmed, highly complex tapestry of geophysical energy emissions, meteorological acoustic distortions, and human neurobiological misinterpretations. It is an intersection of fields that science is only just beginning to properly document and untangle.
So I want to leave you with a question to ponder. The next time you are standing outside your house in the dead of winter, perhaps just taking the dog for a walk or grabbing the mail, and you suddenly hear a massive, unexplained, metallic groan echoing down from the clouds, what will your brain tell you?
That's a great question.
Will you look around the horizon for a freight train navigating a curve? Will you pull up your phone to check the weather radar for a temperature inversion? Or will you feel that spike of adrenaline, look up into the dark sky, and wait for the second trumpet to sound?
And as you think about how your mind will react to that noise, consider this final, lingering thought.
Okay, let's hear it.
We have spent this entire deep dive analyzing the mechanics of the noise, trying to translate what the Earth is saying through these acoustic events. We inherently treat the audible sound as the primary phenomenon.
Because we hear it.
Right. But what if we are looking at the mechanism entirely backwards? What if these massive, low-frequency planetary vibrations are actively having a subconscious physiological effect on the organs in our bodies long before our conscious brains even register them as an audible sound?
Oh, wow.
What if the intense, inexplicable fear people feel in the woods or the cities isn't just a psychological reaction to a spooky, unknown noise, but a deeply biological cellular reaction to the shifting magnetic and acoustic frequencies of a highly dynamic, changing planet?
The Earth might literally be speaking to the marrow in our bones before the sound wave ever reaches our eardrums.
Exactly.
That is a deeply chilling, scientifically grounded thought to end on. We're going to close the file on this global acoustic cold case for today, but we're leaving the evidence out on the desk for you to process. Just remember, the next time you hear the sky roar over a frozen lake at 2 in the morning, the planet might not be ending. It might just be clearing its massive geological throat.